Okay. So apparently, Taemin said to this tanner Korean person that when they go outside, he can only see the whites of his eyes and his teeth, which is obviously a very colorist remark. And it's something a lot of Koreans say to other Koreans, like who are tan. Obviously, there is no one color in a specific race, but obviously, Koreans do prioritize like a lighter complexion amongst themselves. And it's because of like, I actually don't think it's because of colonialism. It's actually one of those things where it's like, if you were outside working in the fields, you had darker skin, so you were seen as like less valuable of a person than someone with lighter skin who was more wealthy because they weren't outside working in the fields. In other words, their colorism is a bit different than American colorism, where it's a bit different than American and like westernized and like places that were colonized by white people, by Europeans. Their colorism is different because their colorism is based on like wealth. Like, okay, if you were in the field working, you were tanner, which means, okay, your ancestors were poor. Whereas if you're lighter skinned, then you were in the house and you're wealthy. So that's why they're like, okay, white, pale complexion is better. Whereas in the West and in places colonized by Europeans, it's like white is good, dark is bad. And it's about race. It's like if you resemble enslaved persons, like if you resemble someone who, a black person, come on, let's just say it. If you resemble black people, the closer you resemble black people, the more worthless you are because you are some percentage black. Whereas in Korea, that was never a problem. Being black, being half black, having a proximity to like Africans or like enslaved persons was never a thing because they weren't really over there. It's whatever the word is for like homogenous. It's homogenous. And like I'm not caping for him or anything. I'm not like, oh, that's Mike Taemin, so I'm not trying to make excuses for him. I'm just explaining further context, right? So like if Taemin were to say that to a black person, it would be read as racist because of the history of, shit in this country. Like if he said that to a black person, let's say he's in America and he says that to a black person, I do think there's a possibility for the comment to be racist, but intentions don't matter all the time, right? But the intentions could be like not racist, right? So as someone from Korea, obviously it's something to get educated on, but they don't know like really the deep, rich history of like slavery and enslaved persons and like, the N-word and stuff like that. Like, well, they should know now. They should know now because like K-pop is so worldwide. Korea is allowing more people of different races into their country because K-pop got so big. More people are going to Korea, so they have more exposure to black people and whatnot. So obviously, I don't think that that's something that he would say to a black person, that, oh, you're so dark, I can only see the whites of your teeth and the whites of your eyes and your teeth, blah, blah, blah. I think it's one of those cultural things, even though in that same sentence could be said here and be read as racist if you say it to a black person. Does that make sense? Like, it's colorist. It is. It's colorist. But it's not racist, and it's not colorist in the same vein as, like, Western colorism is. That's what I'm trying to get at, is that it's the context changes based upon where you are. Korea was never colonized. Korea was never, there was never a European presence when Korea's colorism started. Their colorism has more to do with like, oh, you were working the fields, your ancestors were working the fields, you have a poor heritage. That's why your skin is dark. Your skin is light because you have a rich heritage. So whiter skin is better. Whereas over here, it's somewhere down your bloodline, there's a black enslaved person. That is why your skin is dark. You are beneath me. Does that make sense? Do you see where the racism comes in? Do you see where the colorism is a bit worse in the West? Like that same comment, if he said that shit in the West to a black person, then it's racist, even if he didn't mean it to be racist. If he said that shit in the West to even a Korean, Western people would be like, what the fuck? Ew. But in Korea, it was more normalized because this is just a thing about where your family worked, where your ancestors worked. Were they in the fields or were they rich being waited on? Whereas here, it's like, do you have an N-word in your lineage somewhere? You know what I'm saying? So that's the difference. I'm not caping for Taemin. I'm not saying he's guiltless or that he is exempt from being yelled at or whatever, because what he said was ignorant and stupid and colorist, but the colorism is different, which is why I feel I'm less like, how could he fucking say that? I'm not a fan anymore. Because I do understand, like, the nuance, the cultural nuance. He's not saying, like, you're ugly and you look like a black person and you're so dark, there must be some N-words in your lineage somewhere. I feel like that would be more, okay, fuck this guy. You know what I'm saying? I feel like when Korean people say that, it has nothing to do with, like, it has nothing to do with black people, even though it affects black people because our skin is dark, right? But it has nothing to do with black people, whereas in the West, it has everything to do with black people. In countries colonized by Europeans, it has everything to do with black people, colorism, I mean. And, like, people want proximity to whiteness, which is the opposite of blackness, right? It's not like that in Korea. It's, I want to look like my ancestors were rich. I want to look like I was a part of the upper class. I need white skin. I don't want to look like I was a serf or an indentured servant or a field worker. That's the difference. Let me know if that made sense or didn't make sense.